Yes, greetings, JD for Shieldrum Records. Today we will start the second part of exploring all Ableton effects. Okay, so to start, I will just make a bit of auto promotion. If you need some more content about effects, instruments, or information, you can subscribe to Shieldrum Records Patreon. You will find a lot of reward here. I collect some rewards since 2 years and a half, something like that. So there will be some tools for beginners and for confirmed people. What can I say else? Don't miss on YouTube Shieldrum Records, where we are actually. There's a lot of content, also some videos that show you some rhythm making in real time or explaining different device. So for this series, I started in 2026, meaning this year. The series concerned the exploration of all Ableton effects. Okay, stock plugin Ableton effects. So last week we started the list with vocal align, not vocal align, but align delay, align delay, and we go through until the compressor. So what I will do today, I will just do a quick recap on what we see last week, and then we will continue on compressor, corpus, etc., etc. I will describe audio tools we could use, so all effects as I see in the list, like all the CV clock, CV envelope follower, CV, all this is for people who work with synthesizer, with external synthesizer, analog synthesizer. It would deserve a special series for this, but I guess there's a lot in YouTube, a lot of people who already see that subject. So we will just concentrate to see what we can find in the stock plugin from Ableton. That way, whether you are a beginner or a confirmed user, perhaps you will have some recall or discover some tools you never use. Okay, let's just play a little of the music I will use for all the demos. So this is a quick rhythm I made this morning for tonight, and I choose to compose it in a scale, the scale of A minor. That way, if we have to see this in some MIDI clips to see some information, you will have only the white notes to refer to, okay? And I choose also to work in one only key, to simplify also the demonstration of the auto shift from Ableton, because past week I talked a bit about auto shift, but I didn't go into detail, and I think it's very important. The demonstration of tonight will be with some vocal sample, and but remember, you can use this with several instruments. So quickly, let me group all those drums. It will be easier to do some tests. And first, let's check this align delay on the piano, for example. So align delay quickly will give you the possibility to simulate some distance or to create some difference in delay between left and right side of the headphone, or for a sound generally. On a mono sound, it works pretty well. because mono tends to be powerful but not wide. So let's listen this piano with this little effect bypassed. Okay, if I switch it on, I can delay the left or the right in millisecond measurement, or I can change the measurement in time, in millisecond, samples, in terms of number of samples. So this is a shorter scale or smaller scale, or distance, because when we delay a source from another source, it also appears for us that it comes from far. Okay. Okay, if I go so wide, 27 meters, it means that the left is 27 meters apart from the right. Okay, so of course it's too much, but you see that just something like that is enough to create some width. Okay, the two can be linked because sometimes we need to delay a whole track. Okay, so this is a small tool to delay one side or the two sides of the track. You can also find into Ableton a place to modify this. So let me find this where we can see this view. Okay, arrangement clip, mixer control. There's performance impact. I think it's in track option. That's it. So when you display track option, you will have here a little box with MS on each track, and you can choose sample or MS, and you can also delay negatively or positively one whole track. Okay. So that's it for Align. We also see that AMP is very useful to drive and give some presence to a track. It's also very great when you play your guitar directly on it, in it, guitar or bass or any kind of things. So in previous episode, you will see this one is developed, this plugin. So you will see several ideas on how to use it. Without it and with it, for example, here on the organ. Okay, so yes, definitely something very, very useful, and you can take time to tune it to your wish. And the several mode, clean, boost, blues, rock, lead, are in fact also some simulation of precise amplificator brand. Okay. So let's go quick. Arrangement loop in that list is made by the man called Ifta. So all the Ifta plugin, we will see this in another one because it also deserves a whole episode for it. So to talk quick, this is some things that appear in your pack. Yeah, I downloaded it from the packs performance pack by Ifta. So I really recommend you to check this man on YouTube and check what is his performance pack. There's a video where the man himself is talking about all this, so go check this performance pack. Everything to ease up the task of MIDI assignment, live assignment, and MIDI live facilities units. Okay, so we have arrangement looper, prearranger, It means that we can define an arrangement in this page with some blank clips, and when we will play live, it will auto-arrange the track, depending on which track we are recording. Variation is a kind of total recall. Variation can recall a lot of parameter in your DAW. Let's open this quickly because it's very interesting. So yes, I recommend you to take this performance pack from Ableton. So variation is something where you can take a photography of the state of your Ableton or the whole Ableton project, or just the track where you drop this plugin called variation. Okay, you can choose when you will have several presets, because you can stock several photography of the state of your Ableton project, and you can choose for it to be quantized when you go from one preset to another. Okay, so for example, we can say that we want to save all the sets, including the send effect, the device, and the mixer. Okay, so for example, I can just take a new variation photography and call it default. Okay, and then I can, for the example, mute some tracks, for example, mute everything but the bass, and take another picture. Okay, and normally okay, so the quantize, if we remove it, as we press on the variation, it will okay, it's supposed to be triggered instantly, but it takes a bit of time. So I would recommend for that to take a value like 1/8. Okay, and we can imagine also a third photography, because as I click on mode set, it can recall everything, even the level, the panoramic. Let me move different things just for fun. Okay, and let's say this is our third photography of the whole set. Click on new. Okay, so you get the idea. This is very useful when you want to have, you are mixing, for example, and you want to compare several decisions. You will use this to take a photography of the state of your Ableton set. It can also be useful to, for example, I'm on the organ. I can select the mode of this variation memory to get only on the organ's parameter and all effects which are on this organ track. Okay, and then I can move any parameters. For example, let's do that and take a picture. Okay, this is the picture, and then I put everything back to normal and I take a new picture. Okay, and when I switch from one to the other, as you see, the position of my knob are changing. So I made the demonstration on just one plugin, but remember, as device is clicked on, you can really do this on several plugins and several units. So explore this, I will just demo this one from Iftar, but all other things he do are as deep as this one, okay? So the audio effect rack, same way in the previous episode 1, I talk a lot about it with a demonstration, and also today I will not do it again, but I will describe it as a container in which you can bring as much as effect as you want and assign the controller of the effects you put inside to the macro, okay? And then we have the same system as IFTA, meaning that as we have some parameters linked to the macros, we will be able to take some photography of the macros position and make from our chain list some presets that can be recalled even when you play. Okay, so it can be very useful also for some special effects. And definitely a good tool to pack up any of your effect in an audio effect rack and save it in a special folder. Most of the effect, when I want to keep them or VSTs, imagine you want to get the presets or to save your VST as it is, you will put it on a audio effect rack, save that audio effect rack in Ableton, and you will recover the settings in your plugin. So this is a good way, because this is a good way to work, because that way you have all your presets, no matter which VST brand you are working with, you will have all your presets in the same folder, instead of having FabFilter presets into the ProQ and another scene preset into Arturia, etc. Just pack it in an audio effect rack and save it as it is. Okay, after audio effect rack, we got auto filter. Same way, in the episode 1, audio filter has been discussed a long time with several examples, so I will not go into detail in it. Just know that it works pretty well as a simple filter. It works also as an auto filter with an LFO, and it works also as an envelope follower filter with this envelope setting here. So just a little audio demo. Here I'm cutting the high frequencies. I want to cut all the reverb on my drums and bring it up on the drum bus directly. Okay. So for example, I'm cutting here all the high frequency from the drum, and if I add the envelope, depending on the input signal, it will open the filter. Okay, this is what is an envelope follower. And when you work with the envelope, will display in this window the attack, hold, and release of the filter behavior in envelope mode. Okay, and we can also work on the signal that will trigger all this, which is the signal of the drum, for example, now, meaning we have a sidechain filter. So we can choose which frequency of that source will trigger the envelope. Okay? And if we see that it don't open it as much as we want, even at 100%, we will try to boost its level by bringing out the resonance of the setted frequency. Okay. So of course it's low pass, high pass, band pass, but you got also several other filter mode that are very, very interesting. So I'm just here to point my finger on it, and yes, go on episode 1 of this, and if you want more, go check it on the internet, the new auto filter from Ableton, really tough. Okay, so let's go on the next. The autopan filter and tremolo. The most obvious will be on the drum. So this is the simple autopan from Ableton, and it has been upgraded. So let's say it's an LFO that will make your sound pan. So we can choose the shape, modify the shape. For example, here I'm in sine oscillation, and when I shape it to the max, it becomes a round square. And you have several shapes to decide how your signal will go from the left to the right. Some randomization. And you have many ways to sync it to the tempo or several fractions of the tempo, dotted note, triplet note, 16, and simple hertz, freehand, let's say it's freehand. Okay, so very interesting, and when you switch on tremolo, it will move as a tremolo. Okay, simply. So what I discover is, depending of the shape we choose, it will react differently. Let's sync it. Okay, something like that. And I would like it to be a square. Okay. So it can be used in big like that as a auto volume shaper, or if you use some more subtle variation in it. Let's try on the organ. And choose. Okay. Perhaps not that speed. Yes, like that. So of course it reacts as a real tremolo, but instead of choosing a shape in a box, we will move the shape knob and it will change the way it behaves. Okay. The best demonstration will be on some long sounds, but you get the idea. Just to point it out that it can be used as two different tools. Very practical. Despite its simplicity. So after it, we have auto shift. So for the auto shift, I made some little exercise this morning. Give me a minute. And I remove this auto pan on the drum. Greetings. Okay, so now let's talk again about the auto shift. So what I did this morning, I did several examples of how to use this. So for it, as I'm not a singer, I sing something, but you know, it's like not very well in tune. So let's just hear this little nothing. With the music, it will be better for me. as you can hear, it's far to be perfect. We got a bit of echo from the effect section, but yeah. So let's jump into it. I composed this little track this morning in A minor, okay? So I used the scale awareness for my MIDI composition to be sure that everything I wrote was in A minor. That way, what I sing, even by ear, will be near to A minor or in A minor. Okay? So first, what I did is take my vocal, I remove a bit of the noise or heavy breath, if there's some heavy breath, a little EQ, really nothing. We will just focus on auto shift. Okay. So what I did to simplify, on the auto shift will be used for several tasks. First, to retune a vocal, and secondary, to add some harmonies to a vocal. So let's listen this without the auto shift. Okay, and with. Okay, the voice was pretty close, so we don't hear some major difference. But imagine your singing is more complicated with more words and some notes you cannot hit exactly. This thing will fix that for you. Okay, if we reduce the smooth parameter, we will hear it like more two digital effect. Okay, because the quantizer of the auto shift will really fit perfectly to the note, creating this T-pain sound. Okay, and on the other side you have the string, meaning the string of the correction. By default it's at 80%. The more you will crank it up to 100, the more it will correct the notes, okay? So let's leave it by default here. With the music, one voice. Okay, so I thought, yes, this voice is a bit ridiculous as it is, so I duplicate it one first time. And in the second one, what I did, another auto shift, and auto shift is able to shift up or down in the scale domain, okay? Meaning if we are not in the scale awareness, meaning switching this little button on, which link the scale awareness of this machine to the general scale awareness up in the program. Okay, so from there, the shift unit will be in scale degree. Okay, if we are in a chromatic mode, it will be in semitone. So one semitone is 1 K of your keyboard. Each K is a semitone, okay? Scale degree in Ableton is different. It considers that in a scale we have 8 notes. So here, in our case, in A minor, we are going from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we come back to A, okay? So we will try to fit the third of the chord and the fifth of the chord and the octave, as you can see in this page. So what it is tricky, it is that the second note of a chord is called the third, but in terms of measurement in this shift box in scale degree, it corresponds to 2 scale degree above the 0 Okay, 0 is like the first note, so the A. And I want to hit the C for my second voice. So I bring it up one time, I'm on the B, and one other time I'm on the C. Let's listen the fundamental now with this second track, which is the third. Okay, and I do the same for the fifth, meaning I still have the original voice with the fundamental, another auto shift, and this time I go 4 scale degree above the 0, which is the A. Okay, so the A is here, and I want to target the E. Okay, because the A minor scale, the A minor chord is A, C, E for the 3 notes it has. So we have to go +1 scale degree, +2, +3, and +4. Okay, so let's go +4. Let's listen the 3. Okay, and now the last thing I use is an octave, so another track. Yes, by the way, if you see here all those white notes in kind of pink, it is because I selected this scale awareness and we are in A minor scale, so it will flash only the note in that scale. Okay? So for the octave, same game. We start from 0, which is A in our case, +7 scale degree, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we are in an octave. Okay, so let's listen all those voices. Okay, so this would be for me the first use, because I'm sure that singers try to make as many takes as necessary to have a good feeling and a good tonality in their song. But you can fix some little mistake you made, or when you are working with samples. Sorry, when you are working with samples, or yes, anything you can capture outside, you can literally retune any songs to another key. Okay. As I'm in scale awareness, yes, this is interesting also. You see, I set all my auto shift in every track on scale awareness. Okay. This means that if I change the general key of the track here in Ableton, it will automatically change in every auto shift. Okay, so this is a great way to work for that, because if you have like 8 or 10 voice and you have to go through every tracks to change the root note and the scale, it would be tedious. Greetings, Jono Laikonte. So let's listen again in A, and then we will try to change the key above. Okay, so let's say we want it now in F minor. Okay, and I have to set all my clips. Okay, I understand now. as I program my clips in A minor first, it will keep it, meaning, let me show you quickly, even in each clip audio recording, if you set a scale, it will keep it, okay? So if I change the F minor here, all existing clip has to be changed to that same scale, okay? Apparently we are okay now, so let's listen what it would give in F minor. And if I continue to change to another scale, so it will sound a bit weird, but it's just to show you that any note can be output as any other note with this. Okay, so I change randomly. Okay, so let's go back to where we were. A minor, classic. Okay, everything in order. Okay, now a second example with this vocal effect or harmonizer. As I said, I take some vocal sample I made. They are not really in tune, but it was to make this machine work a bit, okay? So first, correcting the tonality, making it more proper. This is not an obligation. Some people like to tune every of their vocal. Personally, I don't tune vocal of people I'm mixing because I prefer to keep the original vibe. I would do it at some points if really they go out of tune. So retuning, and second things, using this shift box and building some chords with some copies of your original voice, okay? And it can also dictate you how can send a third, okay? And as you have this note, you can now take your mic and sing it. So it can also guide you to the precise note of a chord when you want to harmonize in a single key, in the same key. Okay? So using this shift box in scale degree, and I put the third and the fifth because they are classic, but you can put some fourth or sixth as you wish. The second example still use the auto shift on another type of sample, but with a different technique. Okay. Until then, we were using auto shift with its audio input. Okay, and we have a little arrow here. When we click on it, we open the MIDI in section because it can be controlled by MIDI also. So on this second example, I controlled it by MIDI. So to control it very well in MIDI, what you will do is create a MIDI track. Okay, create a MIDI track. And on your vocal track containing the effect, you will switch on MIDI and choose this chord track or MIDI track you build. Okay, this MIDI track will just have some MIDI information, note information, no need for instruments on it. Okay, that's why I called it chords to auto shift or notes to auto shift. If I bypass the auto shift, you will see this little other sample is really terrible. But yeah, that's for the example. Listen. Okay, so really, really bad. So what I did in the MIDI track, I draw some notes to create or some melodies or some harmonies in one take. Meaning, this is a different technique that the first one, which is duplicate many times the voice. Here we have a single voice, and we try from the MIDI input to draw exactly the chords and the melody we need for that. Okay, for that vocal. So remember, this MIDI track you create will control this auto shift on your vocal track. If your MIDI is on here, it is off by default. Okay. If it is on, and if you have select this MIDI track as the source of triggering. Okay. So let's listen again without nothing. The original. Really bad. And let's switch it on now and listen what I wrote as chords. Okay, so it sounds more as like a clean vocoder. I guess we can attenuate the note transition by switch it on the glide and also here automatically when you switch on MIDI, the quantizer box is changing to the MIDI view. The note you write in your MIDI clip must be in the region of the original voice. And you have the way it will behave, the way it will attack the note changing, and the way it will release the note changing. When I say note changing, is the change of a portion of note here in time. Okay? So it sounds a bit like a vocoder, but in the music it goes well. Listen. It sounds also robotic because I wrote this example by hand, just to show you that this thing can do some magic. So after it, I duplicate the same voice sample, but I draw some different melodies in the MIDI. Okay? Of course, as I said, we can fine-tune the release and the attack. I recommend not to go too far, because if we go in a measurement in milliseconds, which could be above the tempo, this thing could miss some MIDI note. So the slower is the MIDI pattern you will draw for your chords or harmonies, the more you will be able to crank up release or attack. The quicker the note transition appear, and less you will be able to push attack and release if you don't want to miss some notes. Okay, so listen those 3 examples with 3 different melodies. This last example, what I did is more a kind of arpeggiate the note and go in the voice effect territory, let's say. Okay, so I find this technique also interesting for several things, meaning even if I want to sing it, sing those harmonies, for example. I would like to sing them because I don't want this vocoder effect. It's a way to take time to write some perfect melody I would like to sing with it, listen to it, and then voice it, revoice it, I mean. So For this effect, really, as a tool for some crazy special effects for the voice or to harmonize any monophonic source, but also to guide your ear when you want to do some retake. I'm sure it's also very interesting to work with this on guitars, to have some octaver on guitars and things. So let's listen to the other example I made. It's just the scale. Okay, and for the last example, what I did is to chop this original vocal sample and to add different melody to that chop. So listen, excuse me for your ears, but just listen what it is without this effect. Okay, so really bad. But this is the texture, and us to have an idea, listen with the auto shift. Okay, and listen with the music now. Okay, so this was for the auto shift. I voluntarily went into the major function of it. Okay, that way, even if you are a beginner, you can just use it like this, meaning compose a track by selecting a scale in a scale awareness box. So choose your scale before you start your track. Then when you build your track, take care in your MIDI clips that any of your notes are in the scale. Okay, you just have to follow this kind of pink color, which will guide you to see if you are in the right scale. So, and as soon as your track is in the right scale, you will be able to switch on the scale awareness mode on the auto shift, on any auto shift. And just work with the shift box to do your harmonies. Okay, we have also several things like changing the general pitch, the fine, the ferment. It's interesting. By the way, we can continue quickly this demo. What we can say is that any of the singer is not the same. So they don't have the same way of singing, and the format is what differentiate one person from another. Okay, so even if you sing with the same voice, you can experiment by moving the format knob slightly for each voice. This second one was already moved, -1.6. Okay, I already did it, in fact. Okay, that way each voice will have a different blueprint. Okay, and we can also activate the format following, meaning it's like a envelope filter following, but here it will move this knob of format, okay, depending of the power entering these effects, okay. And here, same way, I already put a bit of it. Okay, for the last example on it, if you only need one harmony, you can, for example, choose the fifth at 4 scale degree above the 0 note, origin note, which is A, and use the dry rate to mix your original voice and that fifth. So this is in case you just need one harmony. And for the other technique with the MIDI drawing notes, which is guiding the auto shift, you can also use this dry wet knob. If you want, but I would use the dry wet knob in this case if my notes, my written notes, follow exactly the rhythm of the original voice. In my case here, it's some special effect and redrawing some melody with the voice texture, so I don't need to add some dry level. Okay, so this is done. Now you have all what you need for this effect. And as you see, I have one 5-track with an auto shift on it, and Ableton still work pretty good. So it don't take that much CPU. Okay, let's go on the next now. The next one is the beat repeat. Also, I will refer to the episode 1 of Ableton stock plugins exploration because I talk a lot about it in this. So I will not go into detail, just a demonstration. So the more you crank up variation, the more the plugin will look for other speed around the set speed. For example, if I set my speed to 124, or 112, a small variation will bring my grid or to 1.8 or to 124. But if I bring variation to the max, it will look far to the left and far to the right. And as I said earlier, we can use the chance probability knob for it to trigger whenever you want, or we can set it to 0% and switch on the repeat switch when we need a repetition. For that technique, it's better to bring it the offset at the beginning. So yes, and also diplomas, as I said in episode 1, I talk more about it. I would just add today that it's a live instrument also, it's a live effect. So don't hesitate on your MIDI controller to assign whatever control you want to have under your hand and tweak it live and direct, yes, to make everything bug and come back to the normal state by switching it off. Okay, so this was beat repeat. Let's go on the next one. The next one is cabinet, and cabinet is something which work with the amplificator. Yes, okay, it will emulate the speaker cabinet, and here you choose how many speaker of which size, and here you will choose which kind of mic or how the mic will capture this, off axis, on axis, or far. And below this you will choose what kind of mic, dynamic or condenser. You can have it in dual, in stereo or in mono, and you have a dry wet. Okay, so it's not exclusively to put it after a amp, because a amp has a cabinet with speaker. You can try it on any track to simulate that you take it with a mic from a speaker delivering its level. So let's try, for example, on the drum. It will be obvious. So without, with, okay, so let's say we will take like this with a dynamic mic, 4 speaker of 10-inch, and from here we can use the dry wet. Without and with. Okay, so you can see this as a cabinet, speaker cabinet emulator, or something that will remove some color of the original clean signal. And yeah, you can make some more dull and use this dry wet, okay, to have a good balance between. But yes, to change a bit the frequency print of your original sound. And of course, here on drum, it's to make it obvious in the demonstration, but I think it is more useful for it in single instrument, no matter if it's a one guitar, one keyboard, one snare, some toms or percussion. But yeah, don't see it just as a speaker cabinet emulator. It's a color tool also. So next is the channel EQ, already told about it. You can open this when you don't want to open some bigger EQ. You just want some quick correction like 80 low cuts, some mids. You can select the frequency of the mids, and I 12K, I guess. Okay. So this is a quick EQ, and you see also the wave shape or the frequency response of your track in it. Okay, so very practical when you just need simple things. Chorus ensemble, I talk about it in the previous episode 1, but yeah, I didn't tell it, but for any plugins, don't hesitate to go into the preset list, okay? Because the preset list, if it is well done, will explore the different possibility of one effects, okay? So let's try it on this piano. Let's try some presets. Okay, so many things. The good idea is to take one you find the more close to what you are looking for, and then tweak it to your taste. It can be a classic chorus ensemble. We have 3 delayed lines of the same sound. And vibrato is another effect which will make your sound vibrate. So very interesting in long sounds. Perhaps let's make a short pause and compose some pads. That way we will test some effect also on long sound. So to go faster, to draw those pads, I will copy my piano MIDI and bring this to the beginning. Okay, then I will extend all this note like that. Okay, this should be okay. This is looped. Okay, let's loop that. And let's find some pads quickly. In fact, whatever pad. Yes. Strings here, I see. Perhaps a bit high. So I drop everything 1 octave. Okay, this will be enough for the demo. Let's boom that in audio. Okay. I have to remove this effect on the piano. Okay, now let's loop this. Perfect. Loop. Okay. A little EQing. And let's level. And now let's test again this chorus classic. So this is with, and this is without. So you can make it totally mono at 0% width, normal stereo or above the normal stereo. And if you want to keep back, take back the attack in your sound, if you have some attack, you will set back a bit of dry level in it. And by the way, just to finish the process of this, I will set an auto filter. And I will set it on where is the unit? Okay, mode, sync to the DAW. Okay. So as you see, only two effects can make a sound that is very powerful in all frequency, make it more not acceptable. This is not the word, but smooth, make it more smooth, and with some movement. I find it more subtle with this effect than without. Okay, now let's go on the next. We were at chorus ensemble. Now we have the color limiter quickly. This is an old Max for Live device that now is a part of Ableton stock plugin. So you will use this to add some color, in fact. To squash your sound and to add some color. So this is a tool I would prefer use on some single tracks to give some color to a single element. But yes, quite simple. Loudness, ceiling, release, saturation, color. Explore this. And you have some preset also on this one. And for example, if you find a sound that really pleases you, but it's eating every of your sound, you will group it, Control G, it will set it directly in an audio effect rack. And you can add, create another chain, which will be dry. We have the effect, the dry, and we will do the balance between the two. So I guess the maximum for some heavy effects, you would set it to -12 or a bit lower, depending on how you set it or crunchy it is. So alone the signal is not very interesting, it pumps a lot. So we can reduce this pump by moving the release. Yeah. And then we mix that signal to the original. Okay, so color limiter. Then we have the compressor. So everyone know already how work a compressor. So if I compress that much, so the threshold is the main control to compress, okay? All this is the way it will compress. How much with the ratio. If I bring it up, it will be, how can I say? Yes, in fact, it's a ratio, meaning you have the level of the input and the level of the output. And what happens with the ratio is the more you crank it, for example, you crank it to 4, meaning every signal that crosses 4 dB above the threshold will, at the output of the computer, sound as 1 dB. Okay, that's why the more you crank up the ratio and the more it will compress hard. Here it means that every sound crossing the threshold of 7 dB will sound as 1 dB. Okay, so let's say it's a compressor hardness. Here is how fast, with the attack, how fast it will compress when it receives the signal that cross that threshold. And for the release, it's how fast it will stop to compress after the sound going below the threshold. So most for drum, you will try to find a release that makes your level curve, the yellow one, come back to the 0 state between the hits. Okay. Here you have the indication of how many compression is appearing in dB. Here we see that our compressor attenuates something like 10 dBs, and the output will help you compensate this attenuation. Okay. Makeup gain make it automatically. By default in Ableton, compressor appear with the makeup gain on. I recommend you to switch it off and to save this as a default preset, because it's better to compress and hear the volume reduction and know how many of it we want to bring back into the mix. Okay, and quickly what I could say, we can have also peak sensibility, meaning the compressor will be sensible to each peak quickly. Okay, and RMS, it will take in consideration the general power level of the sound. That's why when you are in RMS, you will see that it attenuates less for the same threshold setting. Peak, RMS, okay. You have also expand. Expand is something when you want to bring back some signal into a track that have been too much compress. Expand will let the compressor bring more volume to any signal that cross the threshold. Okay. That's why you see in the level line some little peaks, positive little peaks. Okay. So expand, you will use it if you have a track where you feel everything is too blurry and too confused and too compressed. You will try to bring back some dynamic in it. Okay. And if it's really like a sausage cheese signal and you even can't have a perfect trigger to bring back some transient, meaning you see all those peaks, in some signal you have no more peaks, but this power is here, still in. So for this we will use this sidechain filter and choose a frequency, the perfect frequency, which will bring back the peaks. Okay, for example, like that. Okay, that way with this sidechain filter, I change the nature of the signal and in the trigger path, meaning this is what will be recognized by the threshold. And now I can have an accentuation only when the snare appears, as you can see. Attack and release will tell you for how many times it will bring up the level. Okay, so it can be useful to bring back some transient also. Okay, if I remove the sidechain filter, When I have not the accentuation of the resonance from the sidechain filter, kick and snare are at the same level. But if my wish is just to bring up the snare from that mix, I will use this filter. And when I tune it, I see in this little window how the signal is behaving. Okay, if I remove my resonancy, you see we have more snare, but not enough. If I move this frequency, there's too much kick in my triggering signal. So let's go like that and bring up the resonance. Yeah, like this. Okay, so I'm reading the chat room. Compression confused me a bit. Yes, it confused everyone. Tell me what you would like to know, or what you would like to know, what you don't understand. If you can tell me in a few words, and as I'm on the compressor subject, I can answer now. Okay. So compression. If you are here to follow, I can go from start to finish compression in 5 minutes. I'm explaining very well. Okay, yes. So compression, for me, the compressor have two use. One is a technical use. It is the ability to control a signal, okay? Simply, sometimes in a signal we will have too much of something, or in your vocal, for example, you have some low part where you are just singing low, and you have some high energy part, okay? Normally, a singer should control its dynamic, okay? But sometimes it's also an artistic choice to have a lot of dynamic in the voice. Brief. For me, personally, I think from the tech, the singer must control its dynamic. Because if it's not controlled, we will have to use a lot of compression to control of this. It's also very useful to control the dynamic of drums, of everything, in fact. So first role, control the dynamic, technical role. The second role of a compressor is to sculpt, to give it the shape of something, okay? Let me just solo the snare. Then we will hear only the snare going into the compressor. Okay, that's snare. I go back in compressor mode, set the threshold to the max. Okay, here we have no compression, or just a little because there's a lot of power at the input, but yeah. So let me describe. I will describe this compressor. It has some abilities that other compressors don't have, and it also misses some of them, but yeah, let's go simple first. We have the signal of the snare entering from here, inside, and we see its signal here. Okay, this signal can be compressed, and how it will be compressed is by the setting of the threshold, okay, that little line. So when this line will cross the signal of my snare, it will start to compress. Okay. Here, the knobs are telling us that the compressor is compressing at a 7:1 ratio, meaning for a power of 7 something or 7 dB, only 1 dB will be out of the compressor. Okay, so this you just have to know if you don't recall well what it is for use. The more you will have some strong sounds, the more you will crank up this ratio. For example, for drums, you will go from 5 to above and above. Okay, for a vocal, a gentle vocal, you can stay around 3 or 4. Here by default, Ableton set it to 4 on 1. And when you want really to crush down something and you don't want it to cross a set level, you will put it to the maximum. It set it as infinite on 1. Okay, and this, in that case, no signal will cross the threshold. When you switch this little window in this compressor, here GR is for gain reduction. So here the yellow line is showing you the gain reduction appearing when the signal is crossing the threshold level. Okay. In the second window, you have the output level. Okay, so let me crank up a bit the threshold. A lot of compression here. And when you go into the output level, in light gray, like white gray, you have the signal. In dark gray, you have the original signal. Okay? And here we can see that it barely crossed the threshold because we are at a ratio of infinite over 1. If I bring it back to the minimum, 1 on 1, nothing happened. Okay? We have unit 1 at the input, unit 1 at the output. So there's no compression. If I set it to 2, 2 on 1, you already see that the level of the peak have reduced here. The white one is the real input, okay? And you have the indication of a 3 dB attenuation. Okay, if I crank it up to 5 on 1, we see that the compress level is even lower. Okay, 20 on 1, even lower, etc., etc. Okay, so this is the hardness of the compression. Then we have attack and release. And here we are entering the sculpting section. Okay. So if I want, for example, to crush or compress the attack of a sound, but not its body, I will use a short attack telling to the compressor, as soon as it's crossed the threshold, compress it instantly. In this case, at 0.01 millisecond. So very, very fast. And the release will tell to the compressor how many time it will take to stop compressing when the signal is going below that threshold, okay? So very short time will bring it back to the original level quickly. Very long time, like 3 seconds, will not bring it back to the original level. Okay, so let's go back in the gain reduction window. When you are sculpting sounds, the setting of the attack and the release will depend on 2 things. The nature of your sound, the original sound, whether it's a organ, piano, strings, horns, short note, long note, or whether it is drums, short bells, long snare, etc., etc. So here we are working with drums, so we don't need to go in some very long, meaning long attack or long release. So my first goal here is to attenuate the more as I can the attack of the sound and bring up its release. So by default, the sound is like this. Okay, what I want is to shut down its attack. And here we can hear that there's no more attack. If I do the opposite, meaning if I leave some time for the compressor to compress, setting, for example, the attack to 1 millisecond is meaning that when the signal will cross the threshold, it will take 1 millisecond to compress the signal. Okay? So my second example will be to emphasis on the attack instead of removing it. I want to add more punch, so I will emphasis on the attack. This is the only moment when you will set your attack very long, because all this portion from 0 to 1 millisecond, there's no compression appearing. When there's 1 millisecond after the crossing of the threshold, it will compress. So the attack of a sound is something like 8, 10, 15 milliseconds. Let's put 8 milliseconds. Okay. And then as I want to isolate this attack, I will bring up the release, meaning you start compressing 8 milliseconds after the appearance of the snare, but after that, keep it compressed. I want just the attack. And this is when I will bring up the release. That way the compressor don't stop to compress. If it's at 0, you see that it compresses and go back quick to the original level. And we still hear the body of the snare. Listen now. Okay. Now I have just my attack. So you will bring this up. And if you don't trust too much your ear, look at this little display. And you will set it for it to be back on 0 level, that line, before the next snare happens. Okay. So here we emphasize the attack. And if we do the opposite, we will emphasize the body. And for example, it's interesting to use the dry wet when you want, for example, a snare that have not that much body, but you want to keep that snare sample. You will do a drastic compression like this and use the dry wet balance after that. So full wet, okay, full dry, and with a bit of wet. Okay, this is what is called parallel compression. So in a good word, some people use 2 compressors. They will use one focused on the attack, on the transient. Let's say we will call it transient. Transient is the attack of a sound. Okay, and they will put another compressor after it and work the body of the sound here. Okay. So as I say, if we want to control the transient, we need a short attack and a release of the length of the tempo. So something like that. The level come back to the original state. Okay. So they would set it as attack control, the first compressor, and on second compressor they would see it as a body control. Okay, something like that. So here, sorry, if it's an attack control, we have to leave some signal before compression. So let's set it by default to 5 ms. Okay, and the second one will just give us the body of the sound. Okay, so that way I have a compressor where I have the body of the sound and another compressor where I have only the transient of the sound. So they would use this technique not to abuse only one compressor. And also, if you set your compressor to control the attack of a sound, it's hard to set that same compressor to control the body of the sound at the same way. So if you need a control on your transient and also on the body of your sound, it's a good idea to set two compressors and split the work in those two compressors. Okay? So let's remove that. This was a sub technique. This compressor, you will use the peak setting when you want to work with some short and hard transient like drums. Okay, and if you want to have a more natural compression of the energy level of your track, you will use the RMS mode. For vocals, RMS mode is more smooth. Okay. Expand, as I said earlier, will do the opposite of the compressor, meaning it will accentuate for a certain number of dB every sound that crosses the threshold. As you can see here, it brings up the snare, but not the rim shot. Okay, these are the three modes. Makeup gain, we will automatically bring back your level to the unity gain 0, depending on how many you compress it. If there's no compression, there's no level up. But if I compress it, it will automatically bring my level up to compensate the level. Okay, but as I say, I don't like to use it too much and I recommend not to use it. You have to hear what you are compressing. So don't switch on the makeup gain. If you want, you switch it on when you finish your compression work, or you look how many this compressor is working here, and you set at the output stage something like the same number of dB. For example, here we have minus 11 of attenuation, so I will put plus 10, plus 11. Okay. But I do this when I did my compression work. Okay, other option, as I demonstrated earlier, we have the sidechain filter. This will, how can I be simple for that? Yeah, so if it's switch off, the whole frequency band of the input signal is used by the compressor to determine when it crosses the threshold, okay? Here we have the whole band. If we activate the sidechain filter, it will select a specific band, and we can emphasize this band. So what we will do as setting here will not be heard directly. This is the sidechain triggering of the filter, of the compressor. But it can help to choose one part of the frequency spectrum which will be the one which trigger the things. To be short, by default, Ableton set it to 80 Hz and on a high pass filter. Okay, that way when we switch it on, it removes all the sub frequencies, which are generally the more high level into a bus. It switches it off, and that way the signal that triggers the compressor is only the low and high frequency, not the subs. Okay. And they set several filters because sometimes you intentionally want only the sub to trick that compressor, or you want a specific band. Okay? So to be simple, stay on what they set as a default and try to find what you want. And of course, as I was saying, every tuning you do here, you will see it display on the screen of the gain reduction. Okay. So here, what is happening? I selected the frequency corresponding to the snare. So there's a hard compression only when the snare appears. Okay, if I remove that tight chain filter, the whole band of the drum will trigger the compressor. Okay, so this is a good way to really tailor what will trigger the compressor. And this is an option you can find on any professional hardware compressor. The last example for it will be the sidechain. But before it, let's continue on the settings. I hope all the previous description was clear. So that release knob I was talking about can be set in auto mode, meaning depending on the input signal, the compressor will adapt the release. Okay. Perhaps an audio file can contain some short sound and some long sounds. And so when the compression will occur, it will adapt the release part of it, depending on what is inputting. Okay, here those three boxes are three different views of the compressor. Here we can see it more mathematically on a graphic. All the portion above that little yellow dot is when it's compressing. If the threshold is set to 0, meaning no compression occur, you have a straight line, a diagonal. And the more you draw back the threshold, and the more it's telling you any input above that point will be compressed. Okay, any sound that go above that point. That's the reason why heavy threshold like minus infinite, you even don't see nothing. Something like this is, yes, there's no more of nothing here. Okay. You have also a third view, that one, that will show you the gain reduction. In previous version of this compressor, there was not the indication of the attenuation, and we had to go into this view to see exactly of how many of the gain reduction was occurring. Okay, so just different sites. Okay, the need to understand this parameter, this window is better. So the knee is that part, and it can be hard or soft. Okay, so if I soften it like this, you see that the transition between when it is compressed on the right side of the yellow dot and when it is not compressed on the left side of the yellow dot, it's more soft, the curve is soft, meaning that when the signal will approach this setting, which is minus 12 threshold, it will start to compress already. Okay? But in the case of a hard knee, I bring the knee parameter to 0 dB, you see that there's no like pre-comp, it don't come earlier than that dot. It will only compress after the crossing of the threshold. Okay. So the more you have strong sounds, the more you would use a hard knee to really block every signal, like on a drum bus or things like that. But the more you work with voice and strings and things like that, you will have a soft knee. Because what we want like a more natural compression. And the compression is sounding more natural because it don't start at a defined point, okay? It starts around that defined point. And there's no some straight compression, instant compression, which could make the voice sound a bit artificial, okay? So the knee is quite important, even if you don't hear it at first, clearly. Know that the more your source is smooth, the more the knee can be soft, okay? After it, we have the looker head, 0 millisecond, meaning that it's no latency, instantly compressing. If you add 1 millisecond, you give 1 millisecond to your compressor to see the signal in the future, in your future, okay? It will see the signal before you 1 millisecond, so it can react more quickly to whichever event will appear, okay? And you have also 10 ms, 10 milliseconds. So the more the signal you will input into your compressor is like speed, quick, like a quick drum of drum and bass or things like that, with a lot of change in dynamic, perhaps you will need to add some looker head to give the possibility to the compressor to see the signal 10 milliseconds before we hear it, okay? So when you do that, your program will delay, you see it at the bottom left of the screen, will delay it from 10 milliseconds, delay the whole project from 10 milliseconds to give the opportunity to every compressor or other machine would need a looker head to do that job, okay? So you can work with 0 ms as it was here. If you start to hear some artifact, unwanted noise, in case of some hard and quick compression, you will add some looker head to give a bit of time to this compressor to react, okay? And the last option is envelope, linear or logarithmic. So let's look env. Toggle the compressor's release between linear and logarithmic. In log mode, sharply compressed peak will have a faster release. Okay. Okay. So you will use log mode for if you want to work with some short and heavy sound and you want some faster release, recovering, or linear mode if you work with some, it's saying here, with some smoother things, okay? Faster release time and less compress than less compressed material, okay. This can result in smoother and less noticeable compression than in linear mode. So this is another way to make that compression more smooth. As this compressor is a digital one, all the sub-functions are to make it work more as a classic compressor or an opto compressor, or because each type of compressor, even if you don't know them, they just react differently for the attack and release depending on the component in the old machine. But here we have the possibility to emulate most of them. You just have to know that we can make it gentle and smooth or hard and quick. So this was deep, 15 minutes. So I hope this will be enough information for you to be interested more in compression. And I would recommend to watch one guy I like to listen to also. His channel on YouTube is called Sid on Stage. Sid on Stage. This man is official former of Ableton, but he know it very well. So now when you will look for some tutorial of more advanced technician, you will understand what they are saying. And of course, they are English talking people, so perhaps it will be even more clear. Would you say compression depend on individual taste and style? Not only. Compression, as I said, compression is first to control the dynamic of a signal. So for sure, it will be on the taste of the mixer. The man or the woman who mix the sound will have different view of how many compression it will do. On the second point, of course, depending on the style of music, music will not be compressed equally. For example, if you have only a guitar and a vocal, we will have a bit of compression, but we don't need that much because we have only two elements in the mix, one acoustic guitar and one voice. So if we add compression on guitar and voice, it will be just to control the dynamic. If we are in drum and bass or any type of dance music or even in dub, sometimes we will use it more drastically because we want a sound from it. We want that crunch, or we want the sound to be squash, or we want the attack to be in phases. And yeah, so for sure it's a tool very used. So it's like for some, using the compressor must not be the first move, meaning you don't have to put compressor everywhere. Because at first, it's here to control the dynamic of a signal. But if you do things well, your signal, whether it's a synth, a guitar, a vocal, or whatever, normally at the recording stage, you already control a lot of parameters. Okay? And on the third point, I would say you have the artistic way of using compressor. There's a tuning of compressor called OTT, meaning over the top, and there's a preset of it in the multi-band compressor of Ableton. And here, this is some drastic compression, really over the top compression, voluntarily to crush the signal. And then they will mix the sound of that crush signal in the OTT with the dry signal. So yes, the more you have to control something, and the more you will have to go deep in the setting. And what I would say also, if you want to understand it, sometimes you just have to experiment. Just take time to experiment. Put it on your drum bus. Bring down the threshold to the maximum and listen. Okay, just here you have a clear illustration of what is compression. And the little click you can hear is those 1 ms set by default. Okay. And you hear it clicking because it's very fast from max level to heavy compression of 40 dB. If I bring it to 0.01, there's no more click, okay? So this is those kind of sound when I can say there's some artifact, okay? So for example, just by doing that, opening the compressor, bringing down the threshold, letting the attack like this is a way to add some little transient, this little peak of energy in front of your drum. Okay, and the more you want this peak of energy be wide, you will open this attack. Okay, so sometimes it's pretty explanatory when you go in it and you just experiment, and with the time you will understand deeper the use of all those things. But yeah, I think the best illustration is to set this threshold to the max and hear that everything is compressed, and you will choose here how it will work. Okay. Okay, let's switch on the next. How many time? We are 150 for the cover of all the effects. Wow. So let's go on Corpus now. Okay, I bypass it, just leave you with a bit of music for a minute, and I'm back in 60 seconds. So Corpus is a very special effect. It will emulate some material. How can I say this? It will emulate the behavior of several material as some tube, some iron plates, some whatever shape. Yes, this is, let's say it's an acoustic emulator, and any sound you will put in it will be modulated by this effect. It's very special. I mean, it's like you could set a piano song in it and make your piano sound like it come from a different material. So it will emulate the size of this material, the resonance cavity of this material, or this material will be struck or with some sticks or like a mediator on a guitar or things like that, and several parameters. I know this kind of effect or synthesis have a technical name, but I don't have it on my tongue now. But yeah, audio demonstration will be the best to understand what is occurring here. So only the piano. And let's just switch on. So this is very loud. Okay, let me draw back the dry wet or the gain. So here it's telling us that the body used is a beam. We can have some kind of marimba, string, membrane, plate, pipe, or tube. Okay. Med echo low, med high is the quality of the effect. Okay, here we have the decay, so let's work with it. The material. Yes, this is a kind of additive synthesis, but there's oh yes, I can't find it, but I will find it. Like it's acoustic material emulator, something like that. So let's go in the presets and see what they are giving us. So as I see the several preset name, I see they already did some settings for specific. Here we see kick tight, kick medium, kick loose, kick, etc. But let's go back into the original by default and work with it. Yeah, I find the term. It is called physical modeling. Yes, that's it. So this kind of way to modify the sound is called physical modeling, because they try to fit to the behavior of natural material like plate, tube, and what would occur if the sound was through those kind of medium. Okay, so it is called physical modeling. Of course, some of those effects are so deep we could go for a long time, try to setting things. We have also, not to forget, in the corpus, a MIDI from, meaning that we can do the same thing we did for the auto shifter to have a MIDI track, and this MIDI track will send some information of MIDI notes into the corpus, which will tune some of the tune parameter, the note parameter, etc., etc. Okay, and of course we have the dry wet to mix it with whatever we need. So no MIDI demonstration, but know that you have it. And as for all complex effects in Ableton, just hover your mouse on several parts of the plugin and look into the info box in the bottom left of that page. We can try to bring it on the drum just to have an idea of different sounds. I don't know how it would react on pads, for example, so listen for pads first. So I'm just setting the effect. We also have an LFO, and this LFO apparently I try to look to what it is linked. I see the amount, rate, phase. So we hear that it moves a parameter, but I can't tell you which one. Let me look. Adjust the amount of LFO. Okay, of that modulation. For example, on string, we can add some space sound like this, discrete. Yes, it can bring life, and I think it's so complex or so unusual as an effect. It can really bring something new to anywhere you will put it. Okay, let's try it on drum. So I guess this is so deep that when you find something, just pack it into an effect rack and save it. I think, yeah, very great effect. This make me remember about ring modulator, but more elaborated ring modulator. So yes, this is the dub of the future. This one, I think, can be very great to use during a dub mix. Why not? We could have it also on a return track, so you can create a return track. Call it Corpus. And that way, you can test it on any tracks during your project. Don't forget to set it to 100% weight. That way we can send that delay only on the Corpus signal. So even if it's a plugin that is more like we set the tuning and we define a material behavior and we don't touch all knobs, personally, I think it's very, very great to add color and in real time by moving knobs. Even if we go outside the idea of fitting a specific material behavior. Also the reverb on this. Okay, very great, Corpus. Now let's go. As I said, all that CV effects, we will not see it. These are some tools used to make an interface between your sound card and some external analog synthesizer, which have some CV in or CV out. CV stands for control voltage. Before MIDI, we were controlling keyboards or synthesizer with the control voltage. So they make a bunch of effects that can send a control voltage signal through the output of your sound card. And for the technician who crossed this video, the output of the sound card must be DC coupled. Okay, like Motu, I know the Motu sound card are DC coupled, meaning that they can send a current, a stable current, without damaging your sound card. Okay. Now all the CV for the CV mans. Let's see for the delay now. Corpus in Latin means body. And yeah, super. Okay, so I understand more why it is called corpus, because we really sculpt the body of material and send the sound through it. You should make a dub called Corpus Dub. Yes, for sure. I think this presentation of different effects is for people, but it's also for myself to recall some of the power in this program. So yes, Corpus, physical modeling, body, same. So the delay. We will focus on the piano for that example. Now we are talking about Corpus. I would like to try it on bass, on everything in the project, but it will take a lot of time. But I will after this tutorial. Let's go for the delay now. Simple delay, the first delay of Ableton. So what we can say, it's pretty simple. We will cover everything on it. So first, by default, it is in sync mode, okay? And we can choose how it will repeat. Smaller value, smaller time. Big value, long time before the repetition of the echo. The classic dotted 8. I think it's 16. 16 note is 1. 8 note. Dotted 8 note. Note, meaning 1/4, and the next value, okay? So it's cool to use it like this when you need a dotted or a 8 note, but you can also go into time mode if you want to be more precise or choose exactly what you want. Okay, I will also recall this little plugin, not plugin, but little program you can find for free on internet. Look for the Lions with a double Y, the Lions then delay time calculator. You enter your tempo and it will give you a bunch of value depending of the note value. For a whole measure, half, 1/4 is the black note, 8 note, 16 note. Okay, so for example, here I would like a 8 note dotted, 346. So I would set 346 here. Okay, so it's interesting to work also in time, because sometimes you can make it a little slower or quicker than the fixed value of the quantized value. Okay, for example, we can set it to 347. We are still in the ballpark, but it is slower. Then below this, we have like the groove box, the groove boxes. And apparently they are on only when we are in sync mode, okay? So that's interesting. As the sync mode sync the value on the tempo of your project, it's very straight on the grid, like, okay? So if you find it too precise, or you start to have some phasing issue, meaning sounds is overlaying and phasing, you will lose those little boxes. In percentage, it will slow down or faster make it faster or slow down the fixed value. At 0, this is a quantized fixed value to the tempo, and you can go up to 33 and below 33%. Okay, generally this is something you will use gently, just to add some differences between left and right, or to slow down a bit the quantizing. And as I was saying for the chorus there was a time, if you just delay from a little percent, little 0.3%, only one side, you start to have like a chorus echo, and it opens your stereo also, okay? So you will use those boxes when you are in sync mode, but if you are in time mode, what you can do is to unlink the left and the right and select two different speed, neighborhood speed, like I would make 345 on one side and 347 on the other. And I have the same kind of result. Okay? So let's go for 347. Continue. We have a filter on the road. We can bypass this filter or switch it on. Okay, so I think those two parameters, filter frequency and filter width, could be some parameter on a MIDI controller and playing with the color of the echo during the feedback. Okay. What I find interesting on that delay is also that little switch, infinite switch, meaning that it will hold the delay forever. It will capture delay and hold it forever. Okay. But apparently when it is old, we can't play with the filter no more. Okay, so this is the old or eternal delay. We can modulate the position of the filter and halting with a LFO. We have modulation here, the speed of that modulation, and we can send this modulation to the filter position or to the time of the delay. Let's try to the time. Okay, when we exaggerate. So this time parameter will make the hidden LFO in this box, make it move the time knobs under the hood, okay? So people would use this kind of modulation with a small amount of modulation to emulate the instability of the speed of some tape echo, for example. Then of course we can send it also to the filter, and this LFO will work on that filter from left to right. We hear it more now. Yeah, it's even more obvious here. So here at 100%, it's moving that thing from left to right. Okay, more or less speed. Okay, so filter modulation or time modulation to emulate the wah and flutter. Then you have three repeat, three modes of those modes correspond to what will happen when you change the time of the delay. So repeat will resemble to classic delay, analog delay and tape delay. Okay. And this still work when we are in hold. Okay. Okay, fade, instead of pitching, when we change the time parameter, it will crossfade between speeds. Okay, and for the last, it will jump instantly from one value to another. Okay. So of course, the more useful or the more musical I find is the repitch mode. But when you don't need repitch mode, for example, when you want to add a delay on something but you don't want to dub that delay or change its parameter, you can set it on jump or fade mode, because as you will not move the delay time, you don't need this to work in the background as a repitch delay. Then we have the ping pong. When you set it on, each tap will be on left and right. Okay. And as we don't have as much control as on the echo, what we can do quick is take an utility, put after it, and if we want to have a ping pong but not that wide, we will reduce the width on the utility to reduce the left-right. Okay, on echo, this parameter is there by default. Okay, I think that's all for that delay. Now, let's go back to the audio effect list. Drum bass, very interesting and powerful one. So drum bass is a kind of multi-effect they build for the drum bass. What is a drum bass? The drum bass is a bass where you will gather all your drum elements. Okay. So of course, if you like multi-tracking and have your tracks separated to mix your dub, have your kick alone, snare alone, you can do that. You can use the drum bass also on single elements. You can use the drum bass also in other kind of instrument. We will try on the bass, for example. But let's just focus on its first role. And that way it will inspire you to know how you can use it with some percussion or any other sources. So without drum bass and with, okay, so pretty hard. What we have in this, we have a drive input signal this drive can be soft, medium, or hard. Then we have a trim. And this trim is useful when you want to use the comp. There's no setting available for that comp. Okay, so it will react to the input signal. And this is why we have this trim parameter to decide how many signal will go into that comp. I see that -7, -6 is like a good attenuation to have a same kind of level when we switch on the comp. So I switch on comp, and it's even still too much. Okay. So you switch it on if you need some comps. If you don't need, keep it at 0. Then let's go and switch off the comp. Let's go on the second column. We have some crunch. Okay. Some damp to attenuate. So this is when I was telling earlier, those kind of settings prove that we can use the drum bus on some specific element, because it makes no sense to damp to 500 Hz the whole drum bus. But it starts to become interesting when you want to damp some kick or some toms. Okay. Then we have transient. It will accentuate the transient in a way here, and attenuate transient here, but boosting the whole signal. Let's hear. So this little only knob is doing what I was explaining in the compressor, or we crush down the attack, or we crush the body, or we set emphasis on the body or emphasis on the attack. And they did it with only one knob called transient. Then we have the boom. Let's solo the boom. So the boom is will isolate the low frequency and can bring it to a resonancy and make it boom. Okay, we have a decay for that boom. And we can choose the frequency of that boom. So useful when your kick is too weak, and you can also choose a frequency that is closer to your original key, or the most often played note bass play. Okay, so I know I'm in A, something like that, so I can look for A frequency. And if I want to be really on A for that resonancy, I will click here to confirm. Okay, so I choose the frequency and then I click, because when you set the frequency, it's not perfect. Okay. And we choose the level of that boom with that. Now I was isolating the low frequency by clicking on this headphone icon. So I set back the original signal and I will bring in that boom. If you want to know how much is in-house and how to set it not too much, you can try to fit the level of your bass with the general level of the output. Okay. Of course, cranking up the boom will crank up the output also. But you do this by ear and eyes. For example, I see it's around this place where it's the full power of the drum. So I will set my mouse here. Okay, something like that. That way you really hear that it brings really some body and some heaviness into the drum. Imagine you would like to tune only your kick with that, this is when you will use the dump to focus on your kick frequency. Okay, I guess I went everywhere on it. You can also use it as a dry wet effects. For example, when you want some heavy drive or things like that. Let's try. For example, I could crank everything like this and set a little wet. Okay, so many defined parameter, but it can be first a security for your drum bus, because there's also a limiter under the hood that will control the dynamic of your drum bus. Very useful in many cases. Okay. Let's try Serie for that one. We will come back to some more easy setting. Okay, back to original. Let's try to open one on the bass line. So for sure we will not use the boom into a bass line, because the boom will bring only one frequency. Okay. Let's try. Oh no, it messes with the tonality. Let's add some compression. To be sure, you will have no additional boom, just set it to 0%. So as you see, that drum bus can bring density to any signal. Okay, next, dynamic tube or tube. Dynamic tube is an emulation of some tube. So where can I try this? Let's try this on the organ. So here, the good idea, as it's a bit esoteric, is to watch at the bottom left into the info box while over the mouse on parameters. And secondary, just check the presets. So it is made to emulate some tube amplifier from the past. So of course, all those parameters, some things like bias or things like that, we don't understand it quick, but it is very well explained into the info box. So let's try this on the drum bus. This is a tube emulator. I like to testing on the drum bus because there's a lot of frequency from high to lows. For artistic side, we could trash a tube like that and play with the dry wet. So tube tends to swallow very low frequency and mid-bass frequency, not mid-bass, but sub-frequency the most. So if you want it to sound very more brighter, you can group it and cut the low frequency in front of it with an EQ, something like that, or a filter. Let's take the auto filter. Okay, in high pass. And you can remove until 80 to 90 Hertz. Remove all low frequencies. Now we can tweak our tube. Here, this little vertical box will show you how much it is driving. So you will have some difference, you will hear the difference when you cross that little stage here in the middle. And it can react also to the envelope because tubes in real life, so the sound is some current, some voltage. And the more you will have voltage and the more the tube will get its power, okay? And for very high quality tube or precise schematics, the envelope of the sound will influence that the sound generated by the tube, okay? So here we have an envelope follower with attack and release, the same we have seen in the auto filter and other effects. And it works same way. If I wanted to drive the tube very fast, fast attack, slow release. And if I wanted to react slow to the tube, I will bring some MS in the attack. Okay. And I can go into negative also. And they are explaining on the bottom left that in negative value will create expansion effects by reducing the distortion on load signal. Okay, so if you are on a drum or something like that and you don't want that crunch of that tube in the high signal, you will set your envelope negatively. That way it will attenuate the drive signal when there's some load hits. Okay. So something to experiment everywhere, guitar, drums. You can add one on each track and make it very smooth to have this grit on each of your track. Okay, dynamic tube, now echo. This is the second delay. So let's replace our delay by echo now. The most advanced and the most used here when it's about using echo into the DAW. Yes, for me this one is as powerful and even more powerful as some classic echo machine we would use in dub, meaning some digital delay like the Korg SDG 1000 or Roland SDE 3K, those kind of things with a plus, because we can emulate tape echo with it. We can also change character of it. We can add some noise also to emulate some noise into the delay loop. Wobble must be the time modulation, I guess. We have a modulation section. So imagine it's like the delay, but on steroid, as they say. So let's go from left to right and send the drum in this. On that side, I already explained in delay, we have the sync mode. If we click on sync, we have time mode. We can set a different time on each side, etc., etc. We can set the input lower or higher. This apply, let me read. This applies the input gain to the dry signal as well. Okay. Allowing to distort it for an authentic hardware feel. Okay, so any input addition here, if I click this on, will be added to the dry signal also. It's in the case you use it as an insert with a dry wet signal. So by default, you can set it to off. You can reverse the phase of the delay. Okay. This can be useful when you want to emulate chorus or things like that. But to emulate a chorus, you need a shorter speed. Something like that. With a bit of modulation of something. Okay, this was for the demo. After that, you have the feedback, and the feedback can go up to 150. Meaning, if you stay to 100, you will have infinite delay without increasing of the level. Let's set a decent speed. Okay, 100%. We can bypass the filter. And if you go above 100%, the delay tail will increase in level. So let me set back this filter. Okay, so classic things, the filter, high pass, low pass, resonance, and resonance for the filter. That way you decide of the color of your echo. You can open the filter to see what you are doing. So you have to know that the filter is linked to the feedback, meaning feedback here is at 74% because there's no accentuation of the level of the gain. But as soon as you will play with the filter and add some resonancy, it will add some gain, okay, in the delay loop. So your echo can start to auto-oscillate even if it's not above 100. If it happens, generally it's because you have some settings on your filters that add some gain into your signal pass. So a filter seems simple as tool, but really this is the main tool in your echo to give it a specific color. Okay? So this was the filter section. Let me bring back everything to normal. Okay, on the second section, we have the modulation. Very developed modulation section. We can choose different kind of LFOs. So as I said, it's like the delay but on steroid. And this modulation are stereo, meaning we can have, en français on dit décalage, so in English, offset difference. Yes, this is in English. So we can have an offset difference between left and right, okay, in the modulation, meaning if I modulate the delay time, it will be different on left and right. And as you can see, if I set it to 0, the same delay modulation occur on left and right. So as I said earlier with the delay, if you want to emulate some tape instability of the tape echo mechanic, you will add just a little under 10%. Okay, and they push the concept with this stereo LFO, meaning it's like you having two different tape echo, one for the left channel and one for the right, and the two can be modulated at a different offset. Yes, you have the same for the filter. But to hear some filter movement, your filter must be set to something where it cuts a bit of the frequency. The modulation is applied to the filter. So they don't say if it's applied to the high pass filter or low pass filter. So I will continue, but just a pause to explain that really, if you don't have hardware echo, use that one through your computer. Really, here, even for my professional work in the studio, I'm using 2 instances of echo minimum because I'm sending some echo through the computer. Yes, simply because it sounds better than some external gear I have. So I complete this echo with a secondary echo in the room here. But really, yes, this is something to know and to consider as if it's a real hardware echo because it's so much powerful. It also reacts pretty well before I go to the end of that unit. Let me show you something. I remove every modulation. I remove resonancy. I just cut the low frequency a bit, around 100. And I set the maximum frequency around 16 kilohertz, okay? Here you can hear this thing I was talking about, like when the delay is really synced to the tempo, it starts to phase into the delay feedback loop. Listen. You hear that sound in the high frequency, like phasing. This is because the sound is too much on time, okay? So this is when we will add a little percent of this. Like this. We can go even under 0.5 is okay. Okay, so now the trick to work as it was in the past. In the past, they didn't add echo effects yet, so they use a tape recorder, and the tape recorder output has a delay time between, yes, the tape recorder has a delay time between the input signal and the output signal. Okay, so kind of one tap delay, naturally. Okay, if I put back the original signal. Okay. So this is a kind of result that could give a tape delay before the tape delay effects box, just really a tape recorder. You input the signal and you will have a small delay between the input and the output. Okay. Later, they modified this delay time with a potentiometer. They had like circuit bend the tape recorder to change the time between the input and the output. So it corresponds in our echo to that knob here. Okay. And as they have only one tap, after all this is set, 100% wet, no feedback to emulate the tape recorder, just one tap. And then you will activate the auxiliary send of that same echo. So delay echo is on B. I will right click the B send on the B return, enable the send, and when I will crank it up, I will have my many repetitions. Okay. Without send, one tap. With send, okay, and this is what is commonly called dub delay, because at King Tubby's and in this time, not only in Jamaica but everywhere, they would trick the delay like this, and after that, the tape echoes from Roland and all those machines has been inspired by this trick. But it's always interesting in your own mixing to have your delay set that way. Okay, having the fader of your delay on your controller, and the more you crank it and the more you will have a delay tail. Okay, and if you want it to go in the dark territory, you will cut a bit of the high frequency. That way, the more it re-inject and the more it will remove what we cut here. Listen. Making the delay go into the dark. Okay, so this was the old school tips. Let's continue the description. Quickly, at the output, we see, so the modulation. After modulation, we have character. And in character, we can put a gate. There's a gate effect inside the echo. By default, it's set at 0 and you have no echo. And you draw it down. So like in a compressor, you have this term threshold, and meaning you will gate a bit the tap of the echo. Okay, so here threshold at 0, meaning if there's no echo tap that going above 0, we will hear no echo. At -6, we will hear only the echo tap that cross -6 in level. And there's no. So at -12, we will hear only echo tap that cross -12. And we start to hear it in the background, okay? So you will use this if you need your echo to be controlled at a certain level and placement into your mix. I would not use it that much in the case of using a delay box during a dub mix. I don't need that gate, but yeah, it is here and it can be useful. So the gate, after it we have ducking. So ducking is a bit like the gate, but the opposite. It's more a compressor, meaning that when the signal will appear, the original dry signal, ducking will duck or attenuate the echo signal. Okay. And when the input signal no input no more, then the echo level will come back. So here we can read threshold. So 0 meaning it will attenuate nothing because it's at 0. Okay. If I set it to -20, it will duck a little the signal. In fact, you will set your threshold depending on the level. Okay, so let's go to the max. If I set the threshold to -16, near to -infinity, it means that as long as I have some input signal from my drum, it attenuates from 60 dB the echo line. When the input stop, it will bring back the echo. And here the release is telling you that it will bring back the echo in the mix 100 milliseconds after the signal is no more crossing the threshold. Okay. And when I say the signal no more crossing that threshold, it means that I don't send no more echo in it. So let's set a longer release, that way it will be obvious the way the echo disappear and reappear. I switch off the echo for now. Let's set it around -40. It should be enough. Let me come back. So no echo. Echo. I stop the send and look at the delay level. So let's make it quicker because it's a bit too slow, 500. Let's make it to 150. So this kind of tool is set, for example, if you send the vocal in the echo. When the vocal is singing, you don't want it to be confused in some echo bounce, okay? So you will make a ducking effect with a sidechain compressor or the ducking section of your professional echo. That way, when I sing or when I talk, the echo will be attenuated, and as soon as I stop singing, it will bring back the echo in the mix, filling the gap between the words you say, without making confused when your voice, when you voice something, oh, I miss my word. Yes, when you voice something, it could be confused when you have no attenuation of your delay during your pronunciation. So it's practical in a mixed territory. Not that much when you dub, because when you dub, you want your echo to appear when you open your auxiliary. So very great when you need the echo on vocals or some horns or some melodies, and you don't want too much echo during the phrasing, but you want the echo to appear when the phrasing stops, to fill the gap. Okay, so this was the ducking. Then we have noise, meaning we can add noise into the echo line, okay, and choose the color of the noise here. Okay, and then we have wobble. This add parameter control dynamic and add imperfection to your sound. Okay, so they don't describe what parameter it will hit, but it will make the whole machine a bit unstable. Okay, another way to sculpt your own sound. And at the bottom, we have the repitch mode. This is what's occurring when we move the time. Okay, and when we change the time value, here it's saying that it will take 400 milliseconds to reach the new value. Okay, so if I'm here and I want to go here, it will take 400 milliseconds to reach that new value. If you want that smoothing to be faster, you will use some other value, shorter value, like 200. And the change of the timing will be like more instant. So let's say it will emulate the time the mechanic in a tape echo would take to speed up or slow down. I think 300, something like that, is quite a good value. And it's very useful even when you are in sync time, because this is when, as we jump from value to other values that are far from them, when you are in millisecond, it's just 1 millisecond away each move, but when you are in sync, it's the double of, for example, 200 ms and 400 ms of speed. So the smoothing time is very useful when you use the changing of your time in the sync mode. And the maximum 1 second. So this is interesting because it's more tape, even more tape. Let's listen again. 1 second to reach the next value. Okay, so there's a progression of 1 second before reaching. And if I set it to the minimum, it's instant. Okay? So very useful. That echo is very deep. And to finish, they also add a reverb on it. So to change a bit, let's send the piano into the echo. Okay, that way we can have a bit of reverb, making it like a digital emulation of the space echo, which have a reverb and an echo in Serie. Okay, and that reverb, you can choose how many reverb, the length of that reverb, and you can choose if that reverb will be post-echo, meaning after all the echo feedback thing, pre-echo, before all the echo and feedback thing, or inside the feedback loop. Be careful when you use reverb inside the feedback loop, because reverb will add additional signal and long signal sometimes. So keep your hand on the output level, for example, and let's try, but very low. So reverb in the feedback loop. As you can hear, it increases really, really fast. We can see pre, before the echo, which is interesting when you don't want some obvious echo tap, but more washed echo that will diffuse everywhere inside your mix. Okay, so it can be a great reverb also. Remember that you have the filter. Okay. So let's quickly, and in between, let's make this a good reverb. So we can set the reverb in pre, and we will set some speed on the echo tap, more quick, even more quick. And then you have a great reverb with this echo box. Okay, this was really to explore and show you that we can do really great thing with that effect. After that, we have the famous ping pong switch. Okay, and on this we don't need to set an utility to reduce the width. We have the stereo, and we can remake it mono or above the stereo. Okay, we can also tell it to work delay left and right, but as mid and side. Meaning some tap will hit the mid section of your mix, the mono part of your mix, and some other tap will hit only the stereo part, the side of your mix. The output level of everything and the dry wet. This thing is a bomb. Okay. Okay, so now we can jump on another effect, and I see we are at 3 hours. Yes, we need a third and a fourth episode. This one was a bit long because I made a recap of the first one, but yes, I'm happy of that one. That way, all people who miss episode 1 will have an overview quick of the first effect. So envelope follower. On what can I use this drum? Okay. So envelope follower in itself don't make sound and is not useless, but near to useless if it's alone. This thing is like an isolated, okay, let me open quickly the auto filter. This is the isolated part of the envelope section of, for example, the auto filter or the tube emulation we talked about earlier, or whatever plugin where you have the envelope setting, okay? But here we can go deeper. And in fact, we will set it to recognize the envelope of the input signal. Okay, this input signal can be the track I set it on. For example, here it's drum. That's why you see the envelope of the drum inside. And when you open this little arrow here, you can select sidechain and select another track to be the envelope that will be recognized. Okay, and in this sidechains section, it's a bit different than some others, meaning that we have a mix knob, okay? At 0%, we have only the direct sound, meaning in our case, as we are on a drum track, the signal of the drum. Okay. At 100% of the mix, we have only the sidechain input, meaning the piano. Okay, and we can have a mix of the two signals to build a kind of different envelope. Okay, I can remove the sidechain. You understand this principle. So now we will try to draw the best envelope by adding some gain. Okay, and we have rise and fall. It's a kind of attack and release. Do the envelope will draw directly when it receives the signal, or it will take a little time to rise and reach the maximum envelope. And you see the shape is more round. Okay. And the fall, how many time it will take to go back to the original envelope. So if it's open to 80%, it don't close back quick. Okay. So very useful, because from a source, an audio source, in which we want to capture its envelope, if the audio source is too detailed, we will draw something more round, because this now will control any parameter we want in Ableton. Okay, so to make an example, audible example, what can I take as an effect? I think the filter is the most obvious thing. So I take this filter, but I don't choose its envelope inside. I don't choose nothing inside. I have my envelope here. I click on map, and now from that state, I can go anywhere in Ableton and map that envelope to any parameter in Ableton. So, for example, that first filter. Okay, or I can map it, for example, to the level of something. Let's say the level of the drum. Okay, and if I want, I can also map it to 8 different sources simultaneously. Okay, so this is another bomb. If you have ideas, this will feed your ideas quick. Okay. We have two modes. The original mode, which is called remote. So remote will move any parameter without taking in consideration the position, the original position of your parameter. Okay, meaning if I add envelope in mode remote to my frequency, all this envelope will use all the will cover all the knob of the frequency, all the frequency of that knob. Okay. We will choose here in remote the minimum value and the maximum value. Okay, we will add a bit of resonancy. Okay, this is for the remote mode, the yellow one. If you are in mode, in fact, let's erase this. So if you are in mode instead of remote, mode will take in consideration the original position of your knob or your different knob, and will add this modulation with the setting as the central point, okay? Meaning it will not mess up your first tuning of your filter in this case. Okay, and we can still tell to that envelope to go in the positive side or negative side. Okay, so I erase it one more time. Let's set it as a remote. And let's use the piano only to trigger the filter on the drum. Okay, when I'm on remote, I can't set another frequency for my filter. That's why they set the mode system. That way I can map it to a parameter and I can still move that parameter. Okay. Reverse envelope. So yes, with this tool, you can have an envelope following going in many parameters. Okay, this can go to up to 8 different destinations in mode or remote. Making any effects or concept read by an envelope follower. Okay, you get the idea? So in Ableton, there's a similar effect than as an envelope, but they made it with a LFO. So I can open that subject now because it's pretty close in the use. So LFO will be the same concept as envelope follower, but instead of needing an envelope at the input to send some movement message to anywhere in Ableton, the LFO already have a cyclic shape. We can change that shape in any shape you will explore. We can also reshape the shape. We can smooth that same shape. We can decide how much the shape is, which amount we need, the speed of that shape, of that LFO. We can sync it to tempo. Okay, so it's a real autonomous LFO. Same way, this is the kind of tool you will use for some effects that don't have LFOs. Just for the sake of the demonstration, I can, yes, this is crazy. I can slow down this, putting it in sine for a smooth. I draw back the depth of that LFO because I don't want it to be too much, to add too much movement to my parameter. Okay, and for example, this drum bus don't have LFO because you don't need it. But yes, let's assign our LFO to one of those parameters. For example, transient. Okay, and you see in the transient, depending on the depth of my LFO, it will go far left and right. Okay. So let's think that as we are on the drum, something like 1/4. Okay. Perhaps the sound will be strong. I have to remove my filter. I make it slow, that way we can. So this could be an idea even to go quicker with another shape. And you don't want to open my shape. Okay, so you can imagine anything, for example, assign this to the panoramic of your track. Boom. And it will do the same here. So same way as I explained for the envelope follower, we have this system of remote, which take the control, total control of the knob, or mode, which control the knob depending of its initial position. Okay. And also we can send it to 8 different destinations. And that's crazy. And if the craziness would lead you to need more than 8 destinations, is as simple as duplicating before assigning any of your LFO. You know you want more, so you just duplicate that LFO. That way you have 8 destinations and another 8 destinations for some LFO which are set with exactly the same settings. Okay. There's more detail in it, phase, etc. Phase will displace the position of the LFO depending of sending it to the right or the left. Okay, so it displays the start position. We have hold, which hold the LFO at its actual state. Okay, if I hold it when it's up, it stay up. Hold it down, it stay down. And we have this little R or R, which is retriggering. Okay, this retrigger the LFO at its original state. Okay, so yeah, crazy tool, and it can be useful in any effect which have parameter you can't modulate. For example, in the filter, we have a LFO and an envelope, but they are linked only to the frequency, okay, in the background. If we need an LFO on the drive, for example, this is when we will create LFO, map it on the drive, and yes, we have the drive. And for example, here it's very hard because it's sync to notes, to 1/4, and it brings the drive when the kicks hits. And what I would like to have is to bring down the drive when the kicks hits, and to bring it up when the kicks don't hit. So I will choose a negative value. Okay. Okay, and in the case of using that same LFO for 2 other parameters, I could map it in mode. Okay, map it to the frequency, and choosing it to move in the opposite side, not too much. And I can go on and on like this. I can even map my LFO to the LFO of the machine amount and do some crazy secondary movement. And what is interesting in this experimentation is as soon as I have mapped any of my parameters, I can still change the speed of everything. Okay, so mad. LFO and envelope follower are crazy stuff. Okay, let's go back to the list. Envelope follower, that one will go quick. Now it's EQ8. We already talked about that. So basically the difference is that LFO already has its own shape, while envelope follower borrows the shape from the envelope you choose. Yes, it borrows the shape from the input signal, meaning if you drop envelope on the drum on the drum track, it will take the envelope of the drum track. If you set envelope follower on the skank track, it will take the shape of the skank track. And also we have the sidechain input in the envelope thing, meaning that we can borrow a shape from another track of the set in Ableton. So for example, to have a clear idea, envelope follower on the skank and link this envelope to a filter will give us an auto filter drive by the skank. So I will use this to demonstrate the EQ8. So EQ8 is simple. I will not go too deep in it. What I like in EQ8 is we can zoom things. And depending on where we hover our mouse, on the bottom left, it indicates you the frequency and the note corresponding to that frequency. And this is very, very helpful. For example, you have a track, you don't know in which key it is, you will isolate the bass frequency of that track you hear on the radio and try to look in the equalizer where is the lowest fundamental. Okay, for example, it's here. We are not on the drum, we are on the piano. Okay, the lowest is here, go here and come back here. So you see where I put my mouse at the lowest frequency peak. We see on the bottom left of the graph we are at 290 Hertz, and this is a A2. Okay, the note A2. My second chord, it's around here, for the first fundamental, yeah, the first peak on the left. And we are in C3. So just by observing some spectrum of isolated instrument, I can find back their fundamental note. And if I'm geeky, I can also look what is that harmonic on the first chord. Okay, that harmonic is a E. And what is that harmonic on the second chord, etc. Bref, very useful to know that. So this is the first great thing. The other great thing I can show you is, imagine you do a setting like this. Okay. You want that same setting but exaggerated. You will use the scale function. At 100% is default position. When you go below this, it will reverse at minus 200%, reverse your setting. Okay? At minus, so 100%, this is a default shape. When you go down until 0%, 0% is no more shape, okay? And under, it will go in the opposite side. When you go above 100, it will emphasize your first tuning. So let's play it with the music. So, for example, a quick tip, imagine this is the equalization I want for my piano. Let's reset, open a second EQ8. Okay, let's say for my piano I want that and that, like that. Okay, I copy this same EQ and I will paste it on my organ, for example. And on the organ, let's switch it on. For the moment, organ and piano have the same EQ. Okay? But I can bring down the scale to get an opposite EQ curve on my organ than on my piano. Okay? So this is a quick way to have two instruments that work together but not occupying the same frequency band. Okay. And at first, this is the same EQ, but I use that scale to reverse its setting. So very, very interesting. I showed the example between organ and piano, but you understand that it could be between everything and everything. For example, if you feel that your piano is buried into the pad, you will do the same. Bring the same EQ as the piano and reverse the scale. That way we still have our pads, but it don't conflict no more with the piano. Okay, so I tell about this tip before I even describe everything. Bass and kick, yes, it would work, but I guess we have to be very, very precise, yes, not to dig too much into the bass, but yes, bass, kick, voice, guitar, everything, in fact. Today they made some plugins that do this automatically, accepting, for example, a sidechain input, which will be the voice, and we set this plugin on a drum or the bass or a wool track, and the plugin will analyze and calculate to remove only the frequency of the voice in the drum track or the wool track. Here we do it manually and with our ears, but yeah, definitely with everything, rim shot and bells, etc. It's not an obligation, but when you hear your mix and you hear that it's clutter in some places of the spectrum, this is the thing to do. The first thing to do when it's cluttered is to remove the frequency when there's too much. But if you want really to marry two sources that they fit together like a Tetris in terms of frequencies, use that technique. Also, when you start to set some EQ scale in negative, remember that when you will move your dots afterward, it will move in the opposite direction. Okay, so this is good to know also. So one of the main function of that EQ. Let me reset this, reset all gain, reset the scale, and let's continue. Okay, so I didn't explain, but we can have up to 8 bands. Okay. Generally, I would set the first one to a low cut and the last one to a high cut. Then you can have different type of EQ, shelf, bell, etc., etc. You can also, if you use a lot of EQ, if you don't need all those points, you can even bypass everything, save it as it is, save it as default. And then when you open it, you choose which filter you need and you switch on only one filter. Okay, I guess everyone know where the frequency, the gain of that frequency, and the Q. The Q is the width of that bell. If I use a shelf, it will transform it like that. If I use a bell, it will precise that bell. Okay. So yes, even if it's an EQ and it's simple use at first, it can be really powerful. For example, to add several notches like that. Okay. And use envelope follower that will drag those points from left to right. Tips in the tips. Let's use the mode one. Mode, and I want to push the frequency here. And let's add the second one for the second dot here. So yes, it's tricky. First I have to select it, that way the frequency knob corresponds to it, and then I can map. Okay, so I'm actually on the pads track, okay, and I will use in the envelope follower, instead of using the pad as the envelope, which is interesting also. So we don't see it move on that screen, but you see the knob here moving. We can sing of a third point. And we can choose for all of them to go in a different direction. So even by exploration, you can generate some crazy effects. Okay, and now instead of taking the envelope of the pads, I will use the envelope of my drums. Sidechain, drum bus, and take it not post mixer but post effect. I always take post effect for my sidechain source because that way I can mute the source. But as it is post effect, meaning before this fader and this mute, the machine which receives its signal for sidechain still works, okay? For the moment, only the pads and here the drum. Or a mix of the two. Okay, so this is done. Let's open it one more time. What do I miss on it? We can, so that scale is very great. Adaptive Q will change the Q depending on how much gain we will bring. Okay, you see here it's wide, a wide bell, and the more I bring it up, and the more it shrink a little bit. If I remove adaptive Q, it don't shrink when I add gain, okay? It is set by default because normally the more we add gain and the less wide we want that bell, okay? So very great. We also have the possibility to EQ differently. So first, here I can't recall what was this. Oh yes, this one is really good. If you want to isolate, if you want to isolate a frequency and listen only to that frequency, you will click on this little headphone icon, and when you will pick one point, you will hear only that filter. Okay? You will hear only what is actually modifying. If you have 2 points, for example, a shell, this is the same. You will hear only the action of that shell. It's like magnifying tools for just one frequency. Beside this, you have the visualizer you can remove. Let me cut the corpus for now. Okay. And below that is this, the mode. By default, we EQ in stereo. We can also EQ a different EQ for left and right, or a different EQ for mid and side. Let's go for left and right. So imagine when you take the stereo, this is grayed out. When you take left, right, this tells you you are impacting the left channel. Okay, for example, and if I click again, I'm impacting the right channel. Okay, left-right equalization. This is interesting for monosource because sometimes you can just equalize left and right a bit differently, and this will be enough to create widths. Okay. And the second concept is mid and side. So let's go on the drum to talk about this. Mid and side meaning we have 2 EQ of 8 or 8 bands, and one will EQ the mid signal, meaning the mono signal, and the other EQ will EQ the sides. So we are on our drum. So imagine, for example, on my drum, on the side section, I don't want no kick. Okay, so I be sure in edit mode that I'm on S for side, and I remove all low frequency from my sides. Okay, and on the mid signal, for example, I could reduce a bit my high frequency, and I go back on the side signal and I will accentuate the high frequencies. For you to have an idea, because it's not very obvious into our ears, let's take quickly the utility. Okay, in utility you can also hear only the side or only the mid signal by right-clicking width and setting it to mid-side mode. Okay, the side, it's only this. It's only the difference between the left and right signal. This is what is in fact the side signal. So the side signal is the difference between the left and the right. The mid signal is what is common to the left and the right. Okay, mid signal. So the mid sound like that. Mono 100%. And the side is only the few elements that are side. If I pan some of my elements, like the hi-hat, I will hear more. If I pan my snare also, okay. So this is also a technique from the engineers sometimes to separate the equalization of mid and side, removing sub-frequency from the sides, adding some high frequency and sparkling on the side, and everything in between, everything you can do in between. So this is accurate, but this is a lot of things we can do with this still. Gate, no, I'm too far. Okay, I think this is the end for this accurate. And this is the end also for this episode 2, 3 hours and something, yes. What could I say? After it, we have EQ3, but we already saw EQ3 on the episode 1. So on the next live, we will take back that list from erosion. Okay, erosion, external audio effect, filter, delay, gate. Yes, I think there's 2 or 3 episodes. Give thanks. Glad if it helps. If you have anything or any question before I log out, I'm still here for a minute. Let's compress that bass. Yes. For you the same. Rest well. Yes, it's good if it's a massive help. In fact, I think everyone can fathom or understand all this in the manual of Ableton or in several YouTube videos, but each of them will focus on the tool they use the more. And we are passing by a lot, we are bypassing a lot of content. And yeah, I think this is a good introduction, and that way um, everyone will be able to go into more information more easily, because there have been introduction to all that. Okay. Yeah, very great. So see you next time. We will go from erosion. Yeah, thank you for everything. Dubwise every time, every time.